Hey everybody, gather round. I'm here to give you anything you like. You want free college, energy, mortgages, whatever you like. You have come to the right place. Why? I'll tell you why. Who can take your money?
Who can take your money?
With a twinkle in their eye.
A twinkle in their eye.
Take it all away and give it to some other guy. The government.
The government.
The government can.
The government can.
And who can tax the sunrise?
Who can tax the sunrise?
Who can tax the trees?
Who can tax the trees?
Let you run a business and collect up all the fees. The government.
The government.
Oh, the government can.
The government can.
And the government can, 'cause they mix it up with lies and make it all taste good.
Make it all taste good.
The government takes everything we make to pay for all of their solutions. Healthcare, climate change, pollution. Throw away the Constitution. And who can give a bailout?
Who can give a bailout?
Tell us to behave.
Tell us to behave.
And make the founding fathers roll over in their grave. The government.
The government.
Oh, the government can.
The government can.
And the government can, 'cause they mix it up with lies and make it all taste good.
Make it all taste good.
The government takes everything we make. They're power hungry and malicious. Their economics are fictitious. Soon we'll have to eat our dishes.
Delicious.
Oh, who can be a failure?
Who can be a failure?
In so many ways.
In so many ways.
And instead of getting fired, hey, we'll give ourselves a raise. The government.
The government.
Oh, the government can.
The government can.
And the government can, 'cause they make it up with lies and make it all taste good.
Make it all taste good.
And your Uncle Sam can, 'cause he mixes it with lies and makes it all taste good.
Makes it all taste good.
And I feel so good, 'cause the government says I should.
You can take the money. Everybody's
I don't know how we can follow that up, but welcome to News from the Pew, where we take news from around the world and the web and try to make it slightly less frightening. I'm your host, Rick Barrett, and I am joined by 2 out of my 3 members of the panel. From the great state of Georgia, we have the one and only Jonathan Arrington. Always happy to have him on with us. And Mr. Stephen Cunningham from Nancy Mace's district out there in South Carolina. So, I mean, you guys really know how to pick them. I mean, I'm coming from John Cornyn here in Texas. I get it, but still.
Time out. I'm closer to Lindsey Graham area.
That's not helpful. That's not helping if you really think about that.
And I'm in Georgia.
Yeah, geez. Yeah. So none of us are really doing any better, but we are all doing better than is what is happening over in the East. That is middle. Unfortunately, yeah, I'm not trying to joke about it, but say la vie, that's who I am. This weekend, we had some incidences pop off that will most likely lead to further actions in the region. And if you totally missed it, A, congratulations, and B, here's a bit of a refresher.
Hard to even explain exactly just the mass casualties that happened right here. In fact, the Israeli military says they still don't have a clear number, but I'm talking to some of the soldiers and they say what they've witnessed as they've been walking through these different houses, these different communities, babies, their heads cut off. That's what they said. Gunned down, families completely gunned down in their beds. You can see some of these soldiers right now comforting each other. Many of them reserves who jumped into action, leaving their own families behind as well, not knowing the sheer horror that they were about to come to. They say they've never experienced anything like this. This is nothing that anyone could have even imagined. when you're walking through here. Baby cribs thrown to the side. Doors thrown wide open. Still some Israeli bodies still here because the fighting in this community just ended just recently. So many of these troops are still going house to house, door to door. It's taken them sometimes 30 minutes, 40 minutes, because many of these houses are also still have grenades in them, booby traps. In fact, as we're trying to get closer to some of these scenes, we're being told, no, get back from some of these Israeli military because there are still grenades in the area. I want us to keep walking through, continue to kind of see the destruction that's happening on the ground here. Even something as simple as a soccer net just left to the side here as people were with their families playing. I see in the distance more bodies being covered, all the while as they're covering these Israeli bodies, trying to evacuate everyone else from the territory, taking all of the casualties out of here. It's also littered
I didn't even catch that. What distance?
with the bodies of terrorists. So we're hearing from one of the lead commanders here. It was anywhere from maybe 70 armed terrorists who made their way here from the Gaza border fence, which is less than a quarter of a mile away. And as I said, the atrocities that they committed, violence with guns, with grenades, with knives, targeting these innocent civilians inside their homes. So for the soldiers here, it's a very, very difficult scene for them as well. As I said, leaving their families behind, but they say they will continue to be here, continue to kill every terrorist who is in the area. You can hear we're very, very close to the Gaza Strip, so we continue to hear artillery firing overhead as well. Even as we were giving this tour, we were told to get on the ground and take cover because you're so close to the strip right now, you don't even get the red alert. You actually hear the boom before you're even told to get to the ground. So this is the reality, and this is what all of these soldiers, you can see, none of them expecting this, but all of them being here, ready for the fight nonetheless, and proud to fight for their country is what I'm hearing as well. And so that's why they want to show the press, they want to show these very, very difficult images, David, but they want everyone out here because they want to see and show exactly what is happening here on the ground.
Yeah. So there was, do we have more video or is that it?
Yeah, I was good. Here's more on the baby
Because
story.
I'm like, that can't be it. But.
About the brutal, savage murders in a kibbutz in the south near the Gaza border on Saturday, having to do with toddlers, having to do with babies. What have you learned?
We now have confirmation from the Israeli Prime Minister's office that in Kfar Aza, which is a kibbutz, a small community near the northern part of the Gaza Strip, that they found decapitated babies and toddlers. They did not give a number of children or babies who they found in this state, but even just one is absolutely horrific to think about. This
now
is
they care about dead
brutality.
children.
This isn't just, we knew that they had gone in and shot and killed and abducted women and the children and the elderly from their homes, literally from their beds, but we didn't know the extent of this brutality. We had heard reports about decapitations happening to soldiers. We had heard reports about decapitations happening to civilians and children, and now we have confirmation from the Israeli Prime Minister's office about the brutality of what is there. We have been hearing from some of the first responders who, were on the scene to begin with, and you can hear it in their voices that what they saw with their eyes has completely scarred them and forever has changed them. And I think that what's happened in the South has completely scarred and forever changed every single Israeli. And that's why I think the rhetoric that we're hearing from the Israeli military and the Israeli government is completely different in regards to Gaza, in regards to how they plan to respond specifically to Hamas, to completely obliterate them. They have now been making saying that Hamas is ISIS, saying that Hamas is the same as the brutality we saw from ISIS. And in a way, it's just hard to imagine anything worse than not only going into a civilian community and targeting and killing babies and children, but then doing something just so brutal. It's just so hard to understand and to comprehend that any human being alive on this earth would be capable of doing such a thing.
I would bomb Iran's oil infrastructure. The money financing terrorism comes from Iran.
I jumped ahead too fast.
The world can come and bring them anything they want. If you want to bring them electricity, I'm not going to feed them. Now, the world can come and bring them anything they want. If you want to bring them electricity, I'm not going to feed.
The context of this video is they've cut off electricity, food, and water to people in Palestine, and so they're asking him a question about. Well, you'll hear the question.
Electricity or water to my enemies. If anyone else wants, that's fine. We're not responsible for them.
This is the point.
But you
This
keep
is the
on.
point. No, no, Mr.
I
Bennett,
want
this
to
is the
tell you.
point.
No, listen. You
no,
listen
you're
to me,
raising-
right?
Oh, they missed the question. The question was, what are you doing about the power that's in the hospitals where there's babies and incubators?
Your
Now,
voice,
I've
and we're
heard
trying.
you enough.
No, I understand. We're
I've
trying to have a
heard a lot of
conversation
you.
here. Listen, this
No,
is my
you're
program.
not
This is my
having
show, and I am asking the
that's
questions.
exactly-
You're raising your
but
voice,
it's my
and I've
country,
asked you,
when
and we've
when
already stopped, please, and let me finish. We've already distinguished
Shame on
between
you,
Hamas.
mister. I want to tell you, shame on you.
You're trying to speak
because
over.
We
No,
are
no.
not. Shame on you.
It's nothing
I'm the
about
I
shame. We're
was a
trying to
prime
have a
minister.
conversation
There's
about a very
absolutely
serious
shame.
situation here,
Because-
and you are
because when
refusing
you
to
just
address it.
jump over
The other videos of the Warhawks when we get to those guys.
We can get into those in a second. Let's react to it. Obviously, all war is terrible. Doesn't matter who is fighting, and the fact that innocent people are dying on both sides. And I make the comment before. Now they care about dead babies. They don't care about dead babies when they're being murdered in the womb or whatever the case may be. That's a right. But now it's a little bit different. John, let me just toss it to you so I stop babbling. Your reaction to all of this. Obviously, we have Warhawks, which we're going to hear about in a little bit. So we don't have to really get into that until we hear those parts. But just the overall situation there and the fact that this is an eventuality that just keeps on happening over and over and over again.
Well, a lot has already been said. So let me try to say something that's maybe less often noted and maybe needs to be reiterated amidst all the shouting and obviously it's a kind of scary time. If you know the least bit about prophecy or the tradition of the church throughout the centuries in regard to the end of the world, a lot centers around the Middle East. And I mean, I don't know if there's really a strong strand of any tradition that mentions how things are going to go at the end of the world that does not include the Middle East. I don't think there's one. I mean, I had to think about it for a second, maybe, but as it strikes me, I don't think there's a single one that omits mention of the Middle East. So, with that in mind, something like this has just got to have you attentive to what's going on, right? So I just note this. We're dealing with two different groups groups of people, okay, conglomerations of people that as a body have refused Christ, okay? They are in the birthplace of Christianity, and they have both groups clearly. And look, if anybody else can say, I have not converted due to ignorance, okay, these two groups that are right there where Christ was born, okay, and where his public ministry, was for 3 years there, so for 33 years of his full life. Sorry, there's no excuse there, okay? I get that there are individual excuses about culpability and all, but ignorance of Christ there, no, and you can't just put all the blame on the Catholics for not having spread the good news, okay? At a certain point, it has to come to the person. So these are two groups that with the refusal of Christ, not only are they human, okay, which even for someone who's embraced the faith and wants to become a saint, still there are ways in which we all lose it sometimes and do things we shouldn't. I mean, Henry II, does that ring a bell? Like, oh, I didn't mean that we're actually going to go and kill him. But so, I mean, what we have here is we have two groups that, I mean, from what they have said throughout the years, okay, let's say at least since the establishment of Palestine, as kind of a separate entity rather than Israel there, or let's just say since the establishment of Israel as a nation, or since the 50 years ago, the Yom Kippur War, or whatever you want to call it, what happened there over Yom Kippur. These are two groups that have basically vowed each other's destruction, death for decades. So, like, I don't understand why so many different folks are trying to say, look at what blank did here, and I support blank, so the other side, right? I mean, there's basically there are so many people that are going on one side or the other. These are two groups that have both said they want to kill the other group, or have shown by their actions. I mean, let's put it this way. I think this is the best way I could put it. Israel has acted throughout the decades towards Palestine diabolically. Whereas I think one thing that the media recently has actually said correctly is that, yes, Palestine in response to that has acted like animals. That is, so you want to call them animals, whatever. That's how they have acted in response to diabolical cruelty towards them. And that's still going on, like all these non-combatants on either side. So both sides are not acting human towards the other side. One more Israel has used this almost diabolically shrewd prudence to, in their attempt both at rhetoric, right, how to inflame the Western world, and just what they've actually let come out publicly. They say it in such a way, kind of this academic ease, so that folks don't see that they're actually as a government, all right, as official government policy there in Israel. Actually, after the destruction of the Palestinians, on the other hand, they don't seem to have any care about what anybody thinks about them. So yeah, of course we want to wipe them off the face of the earth. Look at what they've done to us. It's very very much the natural man, the carnal man that St. Paul talks about. So both sides have explained this, what their intent is. So why are we surprised? And why are people going at lengths to say, well, I stand with so and so, or trying to exculpate one side or the other? I mean, it's ridiculous. Like the one thing the Catholic Church and we Catholics could be doing right now is just saying, look, there is only one way out of this mess, and that's through the Savior who was born in the very spot where all of this is going on. Let's say it was born and raised in the very area where all this is going on. That's it. Like that's the only way that any of this happens. There is no way of getting past. There wasn't any way of getting past this before this, but after all this, it seems like it'd be hard to hide massive killing, no matter who's at fault here. So it seems like there's been a lot of death on either side so far over the last week or so. So there's no way of getting past this without forgiveness. Without, the sort of forgiveness that really only comes through Christ. I don't think even on the natural plane you could find an example of the sort of massive forgiveness that would have to take place here. So, sorry, it's the only way forward. And so Catholics need to say, this is the only way out of this mess. Otherwise, just start prepping for World War III and what presumably would be the end of the world. Because that's the only reasonable way these things could go at this point. I don't see, I've tried to think up scenarios. I don't see there's a way back at this point, and certainly no forgiveness of this sort in the Muslim world or in the Jewish world. Doesn't exist.
Yeah, it is an issue that is rife with politicization, and everything is already intertwined, religion and politics, but this is just like the prime example of it on steroids. And one of the jokes that was made that, hey, people took down their Ukraine flags and they were able to substitute those in for their Israel flags now because they had to immediately come out, Steve, and say, well, I stand with so-and-so because we have to pick teams. Hey man, I stand with the Kingdom of Jerusalem. I don't know what y'all say, but that's my team. And there's a lot of Catholic commentators that were openly, preaching for one side and especially, or the other, and especially your conservative Catholics in the way they were speaking in certain terms, the war hawk narrative, Steve, it just right back into place.
Yeah, I'll start with this. There's an interview with not Vivek here. Where did I put it? I wasn't playing on that one right there. Here, yeah, Colonel West, Alan Dershowitz, and Sean Hannity got into it. And again, it's one of those, Jonathan, before you came on, I was joking with Rick saying, man, it's funny how you start, agreeing with some of these guys that you never thought you would agree with. And Colonel West is talking about this stuff. He goes, where is this outrage from when Israel did this to the Palestinians? Where all of a sudden we have a moral outrage on this? They've been doing this for 75 years. And nobody wants to say that because you can't say that. Just like we'll get into the Warhawks, every single one of them has to go over there and kiss the wall, put their yarmulkes on and go. They get their photo op. Everyone's got to bend the knee at We jokingly call them the most favored nation. But I mean, I did a bunch on Clown Planet yesterday, but here's Yom Kippur War, which Jonathan brought up. One of the guys, John Evan Pilato of Media Monarchy, jokingly made a reference. Goes, "Hey, Israel likes to do wars on their holy days." And that was in October 1973, October 6th. Here's the Last American Vagabond. Go to his website. He's done probably about 15 hours of this in the last 3 days. Two interviews. And then this one's a 5-hour one over here. This is a 3-hour. And then there's just links. Here's the evidence to back it up. Like, for example, Ukraine and U.S. has enough weapons for both Israel and Ukraine, says the Pentagram. Which, by the way, we'll get into the last. I'm sorry?
Although, let me just throw this in here while you're saying that. This was actually yesterday. Let me see if I can find this file real quick. Probably can't. You're talking about having enough weapons for both. There was actually John, what's his name? John Bolton? Not John Bolton. Who's Blinken? Blinken is the guy that's, are you kidding me? Keep going. I got to find this video clip.
Blinken. But this goes into the Speaker of the House, which is pretty much a Ukrainian pick on there. It's going to be just the same as the old guard and who's running it. Here's the guy that brought up the chopped heads thing. The Gray Zone brought it up. The source of the dubious beheaded babies claim is Israeli federal leader who incited riots to wipe out Palestinian village. Forgot to do this. Here's Brandon. Where did I have it up here? Who's all of a sudden pro-life.
We're coming near to the end of the rope. I mean, today we announced $200 million.
This is what I found today about the Ukraine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It kind of
keep that aid going as long as we can, but it's not going to be indefinite. So, are we moving with a sense of alacrity? Absolutely. I couldn't give you a date certain on the calendar.
But they're actually saying the funding for the Ukraine is coming to the end of the rope. So
it has to be. We're 33 trillion in the hole.
Yeah.
And here's the pro-life President Biden.
Have confirmed pictures of terrorists beheading children.
He's speaking quietly.
I never thought I'd ever.
Gotta get in the mood.
Anyway, but there are countries in the region that are trying to be of some help, including Arab nations.
So, you're pro-life when it matters, when, it's okay when we do it. But here's the guy that was behind that claim. Here's the journalist. The tweet came out a couple days ago. Journalist Nicole that is already beginning to walk back the claim because she said, "Oh, soldiers told me they believe 40 babies children were killed. The exact death toll is still unknown as military continues to go house to house to find more Israeli casualties. We have no idea, but I made that story anyways. Just like, hey, does anybody recall this from back in the way back machine?
Nails and applied electric shock to sensitive private parts of his body."
She got an this. We went to war over that.
I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
Yep, fake news, but nobody cared at that time. Like, no one's really, everyone, I've seen pro-lifers, Leela Rose, for example, and others tweet out this.
Yep.
And I was good. You're just rubbing your head like, what in the why? Like Jonathan said, why are we picking teams? There was a great thing my bud Landon put up. It was an Orthodox priest or an Eastern priest, at least, talking about how you can be against both. You don't have to pick any. You could be against both. Hey, and there's Palestinians that really. Here's a little thing on the Palestinian, the regular Joe out there in Gaza.
It was only 25 miles long and about 5 miles wide. 2 million Palestinians live packed into this tiny space, one of the most densely populated places in the world. Half are children. Many live in refugee camps speckled throughout the besieged territory. A stunning 80% of the population relies on foreign aid.
Which never gets there.
Aptly called an open-air prison, there are only 2 ways to leave the enclosed area. The Erez crossing into Israeli territory and the Rafah crossing, which goes to Egypt.
which they just closed.
Both are completely controlled by hostile militaries. What Israel calls a border is actually a heavily militarized perimeter fence comprised of barbed wire, surveillance networks, and lethal no-go zones. If you roam too close to the so-called no-go zone, which extends 300 meters out from the fence, Israeli forces have authorized themselves to shoot to kill. Thousands of unarmed Palestinians have been shot for violating this rule in 2018 alone. The same goes for Gaza's coastline. It is the only place in the world where you can't even flee by boat, as refugees elsewhere often do. Fishermen are restricted to only a few nautical miles from their shore. Straying past that, even by accident, you can be blown out of the water by Israeli warships. A massive seawall in the north and south, currently being extended, boxes them into their small sliver of sea. This violence is compounded by an economic blockade that imposes a chokehold of poverty on Gaza, resulting in one of the highest unemployment rates in the world, according to the World Bank.
That's from a documentary put out. It's on Clown Planet. Go check it out. And by the way, what did Israel just do? Was it yesterday, day before? They stopped the water, electricity, and food from coming in, which, as people know, is a war crime. But who cares? Innocence. Just like Fulton Sheen had a great line about the atomic bombs. But that was when that was us that did that. That was when the line between combatants and innocents got taken away, and it's open war. Just like, who's the first one? Some guy named Sherman, who people love that war, love that song, "The Glory of the Coming of the Lord," which it was written about Sherman burning and killing innocents down in the South. Back to the live action. Here's the one dude again. Let's see. Here's Jamie Lee Curtis. American actress Jamie Lee Curtis posted this picture because she thought they were Israeli children. As soon as she learned they were Palestinian, she deleted the post because we just throw up things just because. That's how we work. And
got to be the first to post it, bro. You got to be the first to post it.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Exact bingo. What Rick just said, that's the phrase that pays. Everyone out here is trying to get the first thing out there. It's just like that baby story. How many people tweeted? And again, Catholic reporters and influencers, blah, blah, blah. They were retweeting that. They couldn't tweet harder. And they didn't care if it was wrong or right. There's no due diligence in it. They got my emotion up. Let's talk about this. Oh, nobody cared when, hey, here's kids signing bombs. Israeli kids signing bombs for them to be lobbed into Gaza. No one cares. Here's back in 2014. This lady was fired from CNN. This is a CNN video. They're telling you there's a right. She's basically given a play-by-play. You see a rocket going into Gaza. She calls the people scum for this. She ended up getting fired. And she'll break away because here's the tweet that she tweeted out and got fired. She was over on the hill. You can hear the cheers going on because you can't hear the volume. They're on couches. They're tailgating this. Let's see if I fast forward. I think they give a clip.
Well, the fact of the matter is that this is a spectator sport, and let's throw this phrase out there. And John, anytime you want to jump in with any of that stuff, you don't have to wait. You can just jump on in here. Actually, John, jump in before I go because my comment's very run of the mill. Get in there.
Well, I was just going to say. I mean, I think Steve and I are saying the exact same thing. Like it's easy enough if you really care to see that you see the cheering in all the major. There was somebody that I followed that was showing the cheering in all the major cities of the Western world by those linked with the Palestinians in religion or by blood. Okay, I mean massive cheering, and then also toying with people that were held up Israel signs. So, I mean, like I said, like that is the animal reaction on that side, and so Steve just laid that out for you. And then, on the other side, it's almost too easy. Even though I said it was diabolical, what I didn't mean to say like they're hiding it like Satan does, kind of like a screw tape letter sort of thing. Theirs is just as open. It's just it's done with people with suits and ties on. It's the Lindsey Grahams and the other the Boltons, the Warhawks who are just trying to encourage in you that same sort of bloodlust and thirst for revenge, right? And really not just revenge, but here, just wipe them off the face of the earth. Not even just their military or those who could ever harm us again, but do just what Hollywood movies have suggested for a long time. You got to go after the wife and kids, because who knows, the wife might be raising a child who's one day going to grow up, and then that child might wipe you out. So it's easy enough to see the point that we're trying to make on here if you're interested in it, but it's just it's so depressing because it's bloodlust on either side.
People tweeting out to Layla and other people say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" I mean, one more. Here's a video from 2016, BBC News. What's going on here? It's Israeli soldiers looking to shoot a kid from across the barbed wire. There's the target. And they start after the shot, they start laughing about it. You can easily pull this up on YouTube.
Well, that's also part of what I was going
to. They say it's a kid, and then BBC cuts in and says they got the guy. It's a kid.
Yeah. Well, it's all part and parcel with Israel's mandate to quote unquote mow the lawn every couple years, as they call it, which is the continuation of the warfare within Gaza to try and do what they feel they need to do every single time. And to speak to John's point, there's a movie, not Kingdom of Heaven. It's with Jamie Foxx and Jennifer Gardner. And it's Kingdom something. And it's an FBI team that goes to the Middle East to investigate a suicide bombing. And it's actually, there's one really well written part of it. I'm gonna spoil the movie for you, so whatever. In the beginning, Jamie Foxx whispers something to Jennifer Gardner after they find out the suicide bombing takes place. And at the end of the movie, when Jamie Foxx kills the father, the guy who did the bombing, a brother whispers to his kid, and they both say the exact same thing. We're going to kill the SOB that did this. And so it's just that continued cycle that you were talking about that is just like you said in Hollywood, that continues to perpetuate as they celebrate it. They celebrate the warfare. They celebrate the death. Lindsey Graham wants to bomb the entire world now. Since speaking of that, we can watch some of the warmongers
for this
coming
terrorist
out
state to pay a price for financing and supporting all this chaos. Yes, if you're the Iranians, if it were up to me, this war escalates, I'm coming after you.
I think this is what I'm trying to clarify here, because I'm wondering if
us and Israel,
the United States and Israel.
I want to be crystal clear.
The United. Let me just understand you. Just to be clear, you're saying that you would want the United States and Israel to bomb Iran, even in the absence of direct evidence of their involvement in this attack.
Yeah. So if there's an escalation, Abby, if there's people's throats being cut on television as Israel goes into Gaza and they're threatening to kill the hostages, if Hezbollah is unleashed on Israel in the north, it will be because Iran is supporting that. If you don't get the connection between Iran and this terrorist activity by Hamas and Hezbollah, you're missing a lot. This is a terrorist state that has American blood on its hands. It is now time to dismantle the financing system of terrorism if this war escalates. Yes, I would do a joint military operation. I tell the Iranians today, if the war escalates, you will pay a price. You will be out of the oil business. I want to be crystal clear on that. And if we don't do that, what do you expect to happen in the future? Do you expect Israel to forgive and forget? Biden didn't mention one word about Iran today, and I want to support the president. I'm supporting the Saudi-Israel peace deal. Israel made
the caption, even that, it bombed Iran, even if no direct evidence of role in attack.
Peace with several Arab countries through the Abraham Accords. I want to help the Palestinians we can do business with as part of a Saudi-Israel peace deal. But I'm tired of letting Iran, I think they did this to stop the Saudi-Arab peace negotiations, the Iranians. I don't want to reward them. I want to punish them.
So, Senator, can I ask you now about what's happening here in the United States? Republicans on Capitol Hill, your colleagues, especially in the House, are debating whether or not to fund Israel and Ukraine. Some of them don't want to fund Ukraine at all and only want to fund Israel. But my question to you is, do you think the U.S. risks being stretched too thin with these two incredibly significant conflicts happening at the same time, requiring quite a lot of American resources?
Yeah, no, not really. You know, my dad fought in Japan, and I had an uncle fought in Germany. America fought the Germans and the Japanese at the same time. Not one American has died in Ukraine. Two of my Republican colleagues who believe that we should pull the plug on supporting Ukraine. If you think Putin's going to stop at the Ukraine, you're not paying any attention. China's watching everything we do. So I think it would be really ill-conceived to not support Ukraine. They've destroyed half the Russian military. We've spent less than 5% of our defense budget, and not one American has died. This has been a good investment.
We love war.
Didn't 14 Americans
the money
die in Israel
financing terrorism comes from Iran. It's time for this terrorist state to pay a price for financing and supporting all this chaos.
People gotta die now.
Oh, that was the first
war here. I am with Israel.
Where's that?
We're in a religious war here. I am with Israel. Do whatever the hell you have to do to defend yourself. Level the place.
Level.
Prayers for determination and prayers for healing for our brothers and sisters in Israel, because I think that they're going to need it. But I have always said, and I strongly believe, you can't destroy what God has blessed. And God has blessed Israel. So they will come out of this.
Because I want the American people to kind of take this in for a second. Just imagine that here the Israelis woke up and communities were bombarded. Families were murdered. Women and children were taken hostage, dragged through the streets. The elderly were taken. All of this has happened in front of everyone, on top of thousands of rockets that hit Israel. This should be personal for every woman and man in America. Why? Because when they did this surprise attack, when they took these hostages, when they murdered these families, they were celebrating. And what were they celebrating? They were saying death to Israel, death to America. This is not just an attack on Israel. This is an attack on America, because they hate us just as much. And what we have to understand is this is the reason that we have to unite around making sure our enemies do not hurt our friends. America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends, just like we needed them on 9/11. That's why Ukraine needs us when Russia's doing this. That's why Israel needs us when Hamas and Iran are doing this. And I'll say this to Prime Minister Netanyahu, finish them. Finish them.
Golly,
People are nuts.
Such reckless hate on all sides.
Can I just say something too? Like she actually revealed something, because it happens with the diabolical folks like that. I mean, I can only say she's diabolical for the way she phrased that. Not because I hate her what she did to and didn't do for South Carolina, but she said, you know, everybody needs friends like that in regard to the countries, and that is true. That is actually true. What does a true friend, if you have the Catholic, and I would say the true understanding of friendship, what does a friend do in a situation like this? You tell the truth. That is the hard truth. And the hard truth here is, guess what? Total revenge right now, as she said, finish them. You're going to finish yourself. And look, people, all it takes is a brief search, a tiny bit of study to go back and look and see what happened when the Jews attempted something similar, a finish them approach earlier on in their history. Twice, if you kind of consider the Bar Kokhba revolution about 150 years later, or about 100 years later. But you know, in the early era of the church there, right? I mean, it's all there, the destruction of the temple and what happened. That is effectively how the Jews were booted out of. That's how the full diaspora happened in the first place, was this same sort of madness. The sad thing is, before in history, it was just the Jewish folks talking amongst themselves. Now, sadly, their putative friends in the Western world are feeding them this crap, which is not the counsel of a true friend. No, this is the worst right here. This is the worst possible counsel you could give the Jews in this moment.
I agree, but I don't even think we're, you know, we're even counseling them. I think we're pretty much just encouraging it. But there's that whole idea that permeates throughout both foreign policies, that bad Protestant theology, John. I know you got to go in a couple minutes. You just want to, explain that a little bit more, kind of give the audience a little bit of kind of unpack it for us.
Yeah, I mean, there's it's effectively something that St. Paul was talking about already in his letters to the Corinthians and in some of his other letters right after that, Galatians, Ephesians, and actually to a certain extent, even in Philippians and Colossians. And so I'm not talking about his properly apocalyptic or kind of end times, eschatological letters of 1st and 2nd Corinthians. No, you can see this even before. The approach that you can say that the bad Protestant theology in this regard is it is what it is because it's carnal. Okay, it is not based on the spiritual life at all. All right, and in that regard, it's completely Lutheran. Okay, it follows Luther, in basically wanting an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, right? And so, let me see to make sure this is kind of as simple and as straightforward as it possibly can be without oversimplifying. It's like what happens with most heresies and most errors in philosophy is that you try to get as far as you can away from one thing that you like. There's somebody bad associated with this particular thing that you don't like. So you try to go as far away from that as possible. So you go to this extreme. And what ends up happening in kind of the realm of ideas, or you could say theology here, is trying to go off this far extreme. You say, I don't want to be near that middle because there's some bad folks right around and here. And you come up and you fall off this end, you end up popping up, or some of your followers pop up on the other end, the exact contrary, the opposite of where you meant to be. And it's the nature of not following that. Well, in the moral life, not following the virtuous mean. In the theological life, where you don't really have, like as St. Thomas Aquinas says, you don't have a middle road of faith, hope, and charity. You give faith everything. There's no halfway faith or halfway hope or halfway charity. There's no, extreme with the three theological virtues. With the other virtues, there is. And so when you don't have anybody but yourself to refer to, that's basically what Protestant theology is, self-referential. It's to yourself. Heard somebody trying to convert someone to his version of Protestantism in a local Goodwill today. And it's just kind of the same old. When you don't have that reference to another figure, which even for the Pope is then at least supposed to be the figure of Jesus Christ himself and what he handed on to the apostles and what has continued to be expounded in the church throughout the centuries. When you don't have that reference point, inevitably every single it's what the Bible says. Let God be true and every man a liar. Like eventually you get to the lie either from yourself or from someone else that's not the Blessed Virgin Mary. Every other human being, basically, you find that same sort of difficulty. And so basically what the Protestant theologians have especially in the last 150 years or so, but I mean, it really goes all the way back to Luther, is that, Luther could have seemed very, very anti-Semitic to folks at first, but effectively his theology was Jewish theology. It was medieval Jewish theology regurgitated, right? It was the only way to replace Catholic theology, which is the only true continuation of the one true body of believers that started, in the Garden of Eden already, and then continues into this day. The only way to get away from that, as the post-Christian Jews found, as well as with Luther, is you have to get away with the spiritual life. You got to do away with it, and so you become carnal. So, basically the best way to put it is to just look at what St. Paul says about what the carnal man thinks, how he doesn't think of the things of God. So the people right now that are given the bad counsel are people who are offering carnal suggestions. Finish them, wipe them out, whatever else, the different synonyms of that is basically on either side. That's what they're saying, on either side. And the joy they have is for destruction, not for life, either side. And sadly, even if it's for one side or the other, that's what you see with the Protestant groups as well. It comes through even in the Left Behind books, that same sort of, at root, it's a bloodlust. And why do you have a bloodlust? This is my little contribution to it. This is only because I've been reading a lot of St. John Fisher over the last few months for a project with Mediatrix Press, is in his response to Luther. He called it too. When you do away with the sacrifice, that is the Eucharistic sacrifice, which is the only true sacrifice after the time of our Lord, let's say after the destruction of the temple, at least to allow kind of that separate opinion in the early church that maybe there were some efficacious sacrifices that were still, in some sense, looking to Christ up until 70 AD. But certainly after 70 AD, it's impossible, say St. Jerome and St. Augustine, to have any true sacrifice. Once you do away with the one true sacrifice, which is what Protestantism did away with, there has to be spilt blood, right? And sadly now the Protestants have aimed that spilling of blood at fellow human beings, not just animals. But that's usually what happens when you start a heresy, is these unforeseen things happen like this.
Indeed, absolutely. That's a great point there, John, to talk about and really unpack why we're really in this situation, the way this all looks. And so I don't really know. Do we have anything else you want to add into that, Steve? Because we're going to kind of just keep circling around the same couple points. This is going down. There's reasons for it, and the war hawks want more war.
There's a few things. There's one that's interesting. Is there's a lady who used to be in the was it the Israeli military, and she mentioned that this thing was just weird on how this started. It seemed like it was just planned in a sense, because they were. She was mentioning how, where is it? If a cat walks by the gate, it alerts everybody. And so how does this stuff happen with, weird scenario, how this stuff just raises serious questions about Israeli intelligence. This seemed like it was planned, things like this. What was the other one? Corbett has his second video of his existence. World War III starts in Iran. Here was a couple of lines. Mike Pence, just do it. Ben Cranshaw, the war to end all wars. You've heard Nikki and Lindsay talk about that. And here's one. If you guys aren't familiar with this, if you haven't seen this.
9/11. About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the joint staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September.
This is General Wesley Clark in 2007.
I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." I said, "Is it classified?" He said, "Yes, sir."
And Israel right now is bombing Syria, but you're not going to hear anybody being upset about that. And they also muted Rick.
It's not a big deal. It is what it is. But that's what we're going on here. So the military-industrial complex needs as many wars as possible to fight in order to continue. I mean, I'm sure you saw the share prices of all the major defense companies go through the roof on Monday.
Making it rain.
Yep, because they know it's about to come on, and the spending is back 2 or 3-fold. So it's going to be great for all of them. Maybe not so much for us, but definitely great for them. All right, so it looks like that's going to kind of we'll put a bow on the Israeli stuff. Here, most wars.
You got a good festival tomorrow.
Huh?
You got a festival tomorrow, we're told.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, we can talk about that real quick. Apparently tomorrow's supposed to be like a global day of jihad or whatever the case may be. I think Steve's got
McAdams is following that in our newsroom. Hi, Alexis. Hi, Dana. Yeah, we're getting in that new video and some new information. Also, an alarming alert from a former leader of Hamas calling for a day of jihad on Friday, telling Muslims to take to the streets across the world and protest against Israel. Also telling people of neighboring countries to join the fight against Israel. Specifically, Dana, asking Qatar, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt, the people there, to stand up and fight back. So the man who's saying all of this is Khalid Mashal. He heads the Hamas diaspora office. He's actually in Qatar. He's been posting a lot, actually posting that audio and videotape just in the past few days.
So he's on TikTok a lot, or Instagram, whatever. He's a tweeter.
Yeah. All that means is every fat boomer with a 1911 is going to be going to have their head on a swivel tomorrow. That's all that means. You might see a lot more open carry. Do it if you want, but just it's more important if you have a first aid kit. You're probably going to be more likely to use that than anything else. So
I highly doubt anything's going to happen, though. I get this feeling it's just nothing.
Yeah, like all of them. But yeah. So that is all we have to say about the war in Israel or the fighting in the Middle East. Back home, we have a contentious race for the Speaker of the House. It looks like Steve Scalise is actually dropping out of the race, and they're trying desperately to get that 217 vote for somebody to be the Speaker of the House. So I think if we have some video, we'll take a look at that.
And also Kevin Hern, he is a Republican congressman from Oklahoma who leads the largest Republican caucus here on Capitol Hill. So again, Steve Scalise likely does not have those 217 votes. Thomas Massey, a Republican from Kentucky, says at least 20 Republicans will not be voting for Steve Scalise, whether they don't want him to be leader because of political differences or whether they're concerned about him taking on the most challenging role in the House of Representatives as somebody who's currently battling blood cancer. So again, that is what we're hearing from sources on Capitol Hill, and there is a chance Scalise will drop out of the race and we'll see a shakeup later today. Republicans are set to meet behind closed doors again at 12:15.
Okay, I guess that's all that's video has for us. So yeah, we're looking at that. It looks like Scalise is out. They're trying to get Jim Jordan in there. I'll get this to you, John. Meet the new boss, whoever it's going to be. Probably going to be same as the old boss.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of sad to see Scalise drop out, I guess, because at least with Pepsi and Coke, there's some sort of choice. I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to make heads or tails of it yet. So I really don't know what the import of it is, except that we do have a president who's quite infirm in the head and otherwise. I mean, just physically, and we have a vice president who I don't know, would she actually show up for the job? I guess it doesn't matter except for maybe another year and a few months, but still, I mean, maybe now more than ever before, besides a few other presidencies where it seemed like, this has happened before, maybe 5 or 6 other times. You had someone who was elected, who was practically had one foot in the grave already. But I guess it could be interesting, the fact that this person could be second command or perhaps even potentially in command at some point, just given the situation we're in right now with the putative president and vice president. But that's kind of the only interesting thing I'd say about it.
Yeah. Steve?
Yeah, it's not going to change. I mean, what you saw last week that we talked about with was the Matt Gaetz thing, pretty much null and void now. That was just it was a week of them just propping up their political resumes in a sense. I think Matt will probably run for president. Well, it is president of Florida. He'll probably want to run for governor of Florida. The other guys, they're just getting there, just put it on their card and just, hey, I was there for that. Look at me. Look what I did. I got out. I got a speaker out. There's no solutions going to happen. Nothing's going to change. If Brian McClanahan had a great point on one of his shows talking, it was literally entitled, "Does a new speaker really matter?" And in the short version is no, it doesn't. It's insert rearranging the chairs in the Titanic, really. And he mentioned, you talk about like the spending bills, like we just gave another $200 billion to Ukraine, which if everyone was paying attention over here to what's going on in Israel, oh yeah, we just sent another check. Do whatever you want with it. And he mentioned the Confederate Constitution. Somebody said it just blew up. Had it in the laws that for a spending bill, you had to earmark everything. You had to line itemize everything in there. So you couldn't just like we do right now, said to Ukraine for whatever sign branded, and then ship it off to them and they sign it or whatever. You had to literally put this is going here, this is going here, this is going here, this is going here, this is going here. And then you had to get 2/3 of the states to sign off on it. Now imagine any of the spending bills in the last, of all of them, maybe, not just the last couple of years. Probably none of them would get passed. How many states you think would have signed off? Let's send about 200 billion, whatever, to Ukraine just for giggle. No, they no way in God's green earth you would have had 2/3 of the states. But that's how we roll these days. And Trump he got a couple votes last year. I know they're talking about writing his name in for this. I think he told was it Matt again, or it wasn't Massey? He told Gatz to stop it, knock it off, because he only had like 1 or 2 votes, 3 votes. And Trumpzilla has a little pride thing. He doesn't like to look like it's a clown show. And so that's why I told him to knock that off. Unless he's going to get that 220, 217 needed. If he's not going to get 220, I don't want part of it. So that would just, even though it would be fun to watch him just get up there and just, because anybody, we could vote, right, Jonathan, Rick could get rid of it. It doesn't matter. But Congress is so insignificant anymore. You got a elected king. It's government by executive, and you also got government by judiciary. So neither one of those groups are supposed to write legislation. It's supposed to be Congress. But you see you see Brandon doing it. You see Trump before him. You see Obama before him. You see all those guys doing it. And you see in the if you pay attention to any of the those promises on when they get in front, like DeSantis are saying. By the way, DeSantis is also spewing the pro-Israel stuff. All those guys. What I will do. Well, what can you do? Not what will you do? What can you do? I will do this. Trump never got rid of Obamacare, and that was, and then SCOTUS writes that into law. What did Congress? Congress didn't do anything. They're so but then what do we have? When was it got? It got plateaued at the number it was before, because if it would have kept going due to population, we'd have thousands of representatives in the House of Representatives, but nothing would get done, and people want something to get done, and not getting anything done is a good thing, because not getting things done means you're not getting 40,000 laws written against you a day, or maybe you're not getting these things pushed off, or you're not getting, maybe you're getting more bills, not gerrymandered, but stalled in the process. But no, we're capped at 500. Was it 537? And that's, you talk about, as Abbeville Institute talks about, has a video, are we at a scale? And that's, you talk about taxation without representation. Was it, if you call this a country, then you're at 320 million people represented by 500. Do the math. You have 1 representative for every million people. That is not representation. Not one bit at all. So, the best thing is decentralization, but you see everyone wants centralized government, one form or the other. I mean, if it's war, if it's a border, if it's whatever, it's got to be an answer. It's got to be government answer. I mean, they just had a thing about the Biden thing get pushed down for education, for being able to get taxpayers money to go to sports and recreation, something in schools. And people are going, "We conservatives want." Where's that in the Constitution for that? It's you just did a centralized solution to a local problem, but it's a mindset no one wants to fix.
Yeah, and there's really nothing you can go forward with unless you try to go back to local, really, for all your solutions. Then you shouldn't have to worry about the president or the speaker or any of these other kinds of things if you can get your stuff done at the local level. That's really the answer to all of it. I know we keep hammering it home, but maybe someday you people will actually listen to it and actually get off your...
who was it? J.Q. Adams talking about the war. We're not interested in going out to seeking
monsters to
and
destroy.
demons to slay. I mean,
yeah. So it's
reversed
really is.
now. Now it's Team America World Police.
Oh, we embrace it. We love it. That's really all our national pride is, or which we shouldn't have national pride, but that's one of the reasons why we have it, is because of something like that. All right, folks. I know that Mr. John's got to run because I think he does have another baby en route, essentially. And we don't
want to. Can I just get one quick thing in?
Yep. You can do that and then jump to the cry room and your saint of the week.
All right, because Steve just said something really, really brilliant there too. So the thing is, we don't ever want to forget that it is part of the Catholic tradition. And I wouldn't say this is really baptized by Aristotle. It's kind of a baptism of Aristotle in the way that we speak of it, but it is authentic doctrine from the Old Testament that has been repeated over and over again so many times. We are political animals, okay? And that means we are meant to live in society. That means we're not meant to live as just individuals, all right? We're not homo economicus. We're not just, buying, purchasing man, selling man, whatever it may be. And we're not even meant just to be family oriented, not simply, the family gets the highest priority after your own soul, right? You take care of your own in the various directions according to the hierarchy that God's established in family life. But we're meant to live in society. So we are political animals. And necessarily there is a hierarchy in and among political animals. There's a hierarchy. But that doesn't mean that the governments that we see all around the world are just in everything they do, right? And so that's the distinction we make, right? Is that yes, we are political animals, but no, we are not forced to sign on to everything that the various governments that have, basically all of which now in the modern world have, to some extent or another, thrown off the yoke of Christ. We're not obliged to follow them in all things, right? Now, the distinction about how far we have to follow, especially governments that are openly against Christ in so many ways, that's a matter for a whole, I don't know, probably an infinity of lectures by someone much smarter. That's beyond my pay grade. But we had to balance those two truths, right? That we are meant to be political animals. We're going to have to submit to hierarchy. And so the goal is to do it in such a way that you're helping others, you're not harming others, especially first and foremost, not harming others. But that submission to an authority is going to happen, even and besides and beyond our submission to Christ and to the church. So just as long as we bear that in mind, the frustration or the anxiety over the particulars can take somewhat of a back seat. Doesn't mean that we, there's no virtue in promoting better politicians compared to, less good politicians or even bad politicians. It's not to say that at all, right? A lot of Catholics throughout their lives have put a lot into it. I would just say that among the saints, who are kind of, there are models or exemplars for human action, rather than the exemplars that the modern world has thrown at us. If they ever were really behind a particular political candidate, if you could call it that, their day, or a particular king, duke, prince, you name it, they were usually not too happy the way they spent their time if they invested a lot in a particular person. And I mention this now because this work I'm doing for Ryan Grant, by looking at how ardently at one time both St. Thomas More and St. John Fisher, and this time I'd say virtuously, defended their king against Luther. All right. But then, they saw that just a defense of the king in his person, right, just for who he was not worth it. And so they chose the virtuous path. They said, I'm going to defend him as long as he's doing what's within his right to do. And he was doing it very well for a while in trying to refute Luther, King Henry was. And then when he turned to go the bad direction, they said, well, sorry, we're not following you there because that's wrong, right? Now, his was a theological wrong, first and foremost, but it was cloaked a lot of times as well in a political evil, as certain scholars like Richard Rex and others have shown. But so it's something that we can bank on as well, right? That eventually, if you're behind a person, you want to be, again, as Nikki Haley, God bless her, as she said, you want to be a friend to that person. Yes, and that means sometimes just telling the person, I can't go that far as you're asking me to go. So I'm going to put Nikki Haley both as my person in the cry room, and she has offered a saintly bit of wisdom. Yes, we have to be friends. I'm gonna put her as a both and. I dislike her more than just about any other person on the natural level, but she said something brilliant there. Yes, we should be friends to both to Israel and to the Palestinians, and just say, nope, not following you into the bloodlust. I hope that helps.
That works. That works. What do you got, Steve?
Yeah, being two South Carolinians, we have Tim Scott's bad right now. Nikki's bad, obviously, and what's her face? The Scarlet Letter lady, Nancy Mace. I just saw her wearing the Scarlet Letter. Just
that
bad.
That woman is the definition of drama. There's a reason that woman's been divorced like 4 times. So,
cry rooms. I'm going to give John Farrell. I don't know who this guy is, but he was out there just being upset about the Eucharistic procession going on in New York City. New York City. Yeah, New York City. No, what in the world is this guy doing? No clue.
He wants the hip hop priest. He wants the rave. He wants the.
I saw people posting that. That was kind of funny.
That was me.
Yes. I thought about for Saint of the Week. It would have been hard because she did come out and say stuff. We need to make sure that there's no atrocities going on with the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, which I pretty much think you're going to see a genocide coming in a not so distant future right there. So she's definitely right. But, the way she framed it, I just couldn't 100% go with the idea of the U.S. has to. No, the U.S. doesn't need to be involved in it at all. We should be in it in the first place. But I'm going to go with Lawrence Fox and the idea of, heroes don't wear capes. He got arrested for taking down the LUEZ cameras, which is what we talked about a couple weeks ago in England.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, the security cameras to make the 15-minute city and all that. They're spying on you. Well, they arrested him for it, basically. But he's one of the. I have no problem with what he was doing, and that's, like I said, that stuff's just got to get stopped, and people need to be able to, be able to travel. Because you think what you see in Gaza, somebody brought up in the chat earlier, 15-minute city in reverse. Yeah, that's the future of your 15-minute city if you don't agree with these guys.
Agreed. Absolutely. All right. So I guess my saint of the week. I had something, but I completely lost it. But my cry room, I do have something. My saint of the week are the guys from South Park, because they're doing an episode next Friday.
I saw
where they
that.
are race swapping. Cartman's now a big fat black woman. Kenny is a trailer park trash emo girl. They've raced and gender swapped all the main characters. And that's not the show we deserve, but it's the show we need. And South Park is continuing to be that show that just, thank goodness, in the nick of time, we've had them to at least call out all this nonsense and continue to call out all the nonsense, because that's nobody else has a sense of humor. So we're glad for that. I guess my saint of the week, I don't know. I don't really have any. Oh, I do. There's a sheriff in Missouri, Bates County, I believe, who has decided to waive all concealed carry fees for people in his county due to the unrest in the world. It's $100. He's like, if you just come down, do not pay, just come and get your license so you can have a firearm and carry it on you. And it's not for the state of Missouri. It's so if you travel outside of the state to Texas or something like that, you'll be able to take it because of reciprocity. So good on you, buddy. That's what a sheriff's supposed to do, is make.
What do you think about was it Israel come out and say everyone's getting a gun or whatever?
Well, the whole thing is that the thing with Israel is that everybody always thought that they were packing, because there was always the same 5 different pictures of women or people carrying guns in random places. So the idea was that everybody in Israel had a gun, when really they had them stored at gun ranges and sports clubs. So, and the only things they did have, if they had anything, were pistols. And so these people literally were left to defend themselves with nothing. So yeah, I guess my cry room could also be the Israeli government for leaving their entire population defenseless at a time when, even if they had shotguns or just any kind of long rifle, they could have been able to defend themselves.
I should have the Biden clip. Get a shotgun ready.
Right? Anything. anything at that point.
I wanted to play that clip of the journalist diving on the ground saying there was bombs going off, kind of like back in Iraq with the green screen.
CNN, yep.
But that they did that. And I was going to put the Saint of the Week as the guy that did the dubbing over. This isn't the Blair Witch Project, but you see the lady cuss a little bit, and he goes, "You're overdoing it. Stop." You see the people in the background smoking.
I mean, that the media continues to do this time after time. Anytime I think of that stuff, I think of the one time there was the guy in the kayak during a hurricane, and he was like, "Get the water," and these like two rednecks are walking behind him. Like, what are you doing in that canoe there, buddy? And
or you got the guy that's like fighting 100-mile-an-hour winds. And you see two people walking right next to him, walking their dog.
Like a little pet dog walks right by him. I mean, they do this time and time again, and yet people still believe it. So I guess that's pretty much cry room for all you people. But yeah, it was a clear example why you should never, no matter what the federal government says, ever give up your guns. Because
I can't remember the lady. It was CBS. She was sniffing a bag. It was supposed to be sarin gas. And she goes, "Oh, this bag is covered in sarin gas. Let me smell it. Oh, it tickles my sinus."
Doesn't sarin gas not smell? I mean, isn't that the point? But yeah, these are. Oh, we could have played that quote where John Fetterman actually said on the Late Show that they're not sending their best to DC. I'll give Fetterman credit. That's a good one, considering that he probably spent all day remembering that line. But hey, good.
He's starting to dress nice now. He's looking sharp, made dapper.
Yeah, he's got his good sweatsuit on, like his Russian sweatsuit on.
They pulled off the little thing.
Right. He's really dressing up for the part, because there was that rumor that dropped that he was about to get booted and his wife was going to get installed. So all of a sudden he's starting to put his sentences together. He's starting to dress nice. He's like, I'm not retarded. No, I'm good.
It's like, I didn't even think about this. I didn't even play on Clown Play. I should have. You saw the Utah University?
Utah
football. They gave every scholar athlete
a truck, right?
A brand new truck. The alumni did. And I mean, if you ever watched the movie The Program, which was made in South Carolina, University of South Carolina, I was telling my wife about that. Yeah, you go. I remember 4 guys played baseball when I was living there. They didn't have enough money to play golf, and the guy that ran the golf course where the team played at, it was their course, let them play for free, no charge. They got suspended for the rest of the year. I remember when I played, we had to ask Coach, can you stop practice? We can go eat at the cafeteria, which is terrible food, but it was food because we had like $1.50 in our account. Or the was it the documentary ESPN did called Broke? Not Broke. Schooled. And it had one of the running backs from Tennessee talk about it, said that we would just want to try to get Burger King stuff, and here Coach runs up in a brand new F-350 and things like that. And man, what is amazing? They're giving 40 kids brand new trucks forever, but
name, image, and likeness, man. It changed the game forever.
Oh yeah, it ruined it now. And even what about the non-scholar guys? You guys suck. You guys aren't getting anything.
You guys get Chevys, so it's you guys don't get the nice Dodgers or Fords. You get the.
How you recruit that? Come to Oregon. We got good jerseys. Well, come to Utah. We'll give you a truck.
I mean, the joke was here in Texas that the reason why Texas got the 4-star, they paid the most. That was always the joke. Texas,
you got money. You got money back in the day. You just can't be open about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's how it goes.
But we didn't. We weren't good, so that's why we didn't get any.
Yeah, well, motivation is motivation, Steve. Nobody's paying our rugby team to do anything either, so we got that going for us. All right, folks, that is it for this episode of News from the Pew. Thanks for hanging out with us. Like, subscribe, and share the News from the Pew. We'll talk to y'all next week. God bless, and Viva Cristo Rey.